KQED Public Radio in San Francisco, I'm Michael Krasny. Coming up on Forum this morning, author, professor, social critic, and advisor to the European Union, Jeremy Rifkin, will join us in studio for the hour. We'll talk with him about what he calls the Third Industrial Revolution and his belief that our future as a civilization relies on our ability to function empathically and to bring about global convergence of new energy revolutions with new revolutions in communication. He'll join us for that wide-ranging conversation, and it will include your emails, calls, and postings after this. From KQED Public Radio in San Francisco, I'm Michael Krasny. Good morning and welcome to this morning's Forum. Jeremy Rifkin is president of the Foundation on Economic Trends, and for the past decade he's served as advisor to the European Union and to a number of European heads of state, including French President Nicolas Sarkozy and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. He's also a senior lecturer at Wharton School's Executive Education Program at the University of Pennsylvania and author of many books, including The Hydrogen Economy, The European Dream, The End of Work, The Age of Access, The Biotech Century, and most recently, Empathic Civilization, The Race to Global Consciousness in a World of Crisis. And he's a man who, at one time, Time magazine said is the most hated man in science, but the New York Times said is one of our biggest thinkers and a social and ethical prophet. And welcome back to Forum. Good to see you.
Michael, it's good to be with you again.
Well, this book, it takes us really to the precipice here. It says we're at a key moment. Let's begin there. We need empathy. We need global consciousness. We need to sort of shift our sensibilities, and you're talking about the necessity of that.
Yes, I think we may be at a seminal turning point in our history as a species. Michael, we had two events in the last 18 months, which I think actually signaled the end game for the great industrial age, which lasted over the last 2 centuries. Back in July 2008, you remember oil hit $147 a barrel on world markets. Prices soared, inflation roared, and basic items from food in the grocery store to gasoline became prohibitively expensive. And there were food riots in 30 countries. Purchasing power plummeted when oil hit $147 a barrel, and the entire economic engine of globalization literally shut off in July of 2008. That was the economic meltdown. That was the earthquake. The collapse of the financial markets 60 days later, that was the aftershock. But our world leaders haven't come to grips with the fact that the second industrial revolution is really on life support. Those energies have really sunsetted. And then if you fast forward to December 2009, Copenhagen. So our world leaders come together to deal with the entropy bill for the industrial age, to spent CO2 from 2 centuries of industrial way of life. They couldn't cut a deal. It completely collapsed. It just broke down, despite the fact that our scientists say this may be the most important and threatening event in the history of our species, climate change. So the question that kind of leads into the book is, why are our world leaders, why were they completely unable to anticipate or respond to the meltdown, the endgame of the second industrial revolution in July of 2008? And why were they unable to cut a deal on climate change, knowing that it's imperiling our species and our fellow creatures? And my suspicion is it goes deeper than just coming up with new regulations for a global market or carbon reduction targets. I think the real fault lies in the fact that our world leaders are using 18th century ideas about human nature and the human journey that we borrowed from the Enlightenment at the beginning of the market economy and nation era to address 21st century biosphere problems, and it is a complete and utter disconnect.
Yeah, John Locke and Adam Smith don't necessarily come off, well, they come off, I guess, from your judgment as maybe part of a metamorphosis that we're moving forward to, or you hope we're moving forward to, because you talk about empathic trends and a lot of biological and cognitive science, which is leading us to understand that maybe we have more neurons for empathy and all that. So how do you teach empathy? How do you get nations, for example, who want to equal the playing field and say, you've been using this carbon all the time, now we want to use the carbon, to be more empathic?
Well, it's difficult. I think the first thing is we are so absolutely inundated with this old idea from the Enlightenment that it's hard for us to break open the door. I mean, if we are, as the Enlightenment philosophers say we were, that our human nature is we're born as detached, rational, calculating, autonomous agents.
And material.
We pursue our material self-interest. We're utilitarian. We're pleasure-seeking to the core. If that actually is our human nature, then we're likely doomed, because I actually don't see any way that we could come together, 6.8 billion people, and create a global economy that's sustainable and address climate change and steward the earth if that's actually what our nature is. And as you suggest, what we're beginning to see, and I'm sure you've done some shows on it, we're seeing some interesting breakthroughs in the sciences, in evolutionary biology, in neurocognitive science, in child development, which is forcing us to actually rethink these age-old shibboleths about human nature. And the breakthroughs are we're beginning to discover Homo empathicus. We're starting to see in biology that primates, at least some primates and all humans, are actually hot-wired. We're biologically predisposed to feel empathy. It's part of our social makeup. That is to feel the other, their experiences, their pain, their sorrow, their sense of rejection, pleasure, whatever, to actually feel another's experience as if we were feeling it ourselves. And this has tremendous implications, because if actually our core nature is Homo empathicus, not Homo sapien, and we're born to be social and to seek belonging and intimacy and empathy, we'd have to change our parenting styles, our educational models, our business models. And it might give us some hope that we could actually take this empathic distress that's built into our biology and maybe think about, can we project that so we could become empathic as a species with the biosphere we live in? If we could get there, and I think it's a daunting challenge, then we could begin to live as a species sustainably on the planet. If we can't imagine the ability to become empathic on a human level across the species, I just don't see how we'll make it as a species on this earth.
Well, this is what you call moving from geopolitics to biosphere politics and the third industrial revolution. Now, you say that we are on the precipice of making this decision. Been sort of taken a task, though, on the one hand, because 40% of the human race, you point out, have incomes of, $2 a day or less. And I don't know the exact phrasing, but you say they have little emotional reserves. And so some have said, well, are you saying, in effect, that we, the West, have a corner on empathy or something along those lines?
No, I think the interesting question that I raise in this book is how we know